Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Across the world on the interwebs and around the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or translator, it is The Michael Dukes Show, broadcasting live. Hi, how are you? It's Wednesday, hump day, middle of the week. Oh, man, downhill slide. We could see Firearms Friday from here. But here we are now in the middle of the week, ready to dive into it, working on some more great guests for later on this week. And, of course, as of today, we've got some good ones lined up for you this morning as well. Today, we're going to do our normal kind of headline roundup from around the state of Alaska with the things that have happened since yesterday. A couple things that may catch your attention here this morning as we jump into it. And then at about 15 minutes or so, we're going to be joined this morning by Representative Ben Carpenter, who is currently representing District 29 and who is going to be, well, he's going to be the next representative for the same district by the same name because he is running unopposed as that district changes over to District 8. He is running unopposed in the Nikiski area down there. We're going to talk with him this morning and get the full rundown of his thoughts on many things, including, I mean, why was he unopposed? What's happening? What does the new election look like from his perspective, since he's all alone on the mountaintop, so to speak? And what does he see happening with the budgets and everything else? And by the way, what's happened to the governor's vetoes? I haven't heard anything. What are his thoughts on that as well? So we're going to dive into it this morning with Ben Carpenter, who will be joining us again in about 15 minutes or so. And then in hour two, we're finally going to get our hour of power with State Senator Mike Shower. We'll have some interesting discussions with him and get a feel for what's going on from his perspective as well. We'll be asking some of the same questions, including his take from yesterday's talk with Brad Keithley about this Doug Massey joining this race, and whether or not this is a punishment because State Senator Shower is just, he's not playing ball with the powers that be. I mean, that's kind of what it comes down to, right? He's not playing ball, and he's not playing nice. He's being too combative, or not listening to his. What did the paper say yesterday? Something about he's being contentious even with moderate members of his own party, and that Doug Massey is going to be more collaborative. That was the word that was used by the ADN, that Doug Massey promises to be more collaborative. They had collaborators during the war, and that's not necessarily a good look. I'm just saying right now. They had collaborators during the war. There was another name for that. Quislings. You can look that one up. Quislings, for those who collaborated during the war. It's a more collaborative effort. I know it doesn't always have to have that connotation, but when I heard that, that was the first thing that came to my mind, is that yes, we are running a war here, a war against larger, more invasive government. And we don't want people who are necessarily more collaborative in that neck of the woods. So you make your own choices on that. But yeah, it's a good way to get into it and start talking about it. So we'll be diving into that in hour 2 with State Senator Mike Shower, which leads us to the headlines for today. And there's a few of them. First and foremost, what I've been worried about for quite a while, we finally got some rain yesterday and a little bit more of a misting overnight, but boy, we sure could use some more. The first fires of the season seem to have broken out. Firefighters were working yesterday to contain wildfires that started west of Talkeetna. The big one they're calling the Kitchatna Fire, and that's about 40 acres of forest that is burning, including this one, the Kitchatna Fire, is now burning near 9 different structures, and they've got helicopter crews working on that. 2 air tankers, one from Fairbanks, one for Palmer, dropping retardant on the structures in the areas around it. There are also 2 other fires in the area. One is less than an acre, and they're monitoring that. Crews were expected also on the second fire today. And that second fire is estimated, according to the ADN and the Associated Press, to be somewhere in the neighborhood of about 5 acres. But 40 acres, the first one, and they're working on that right now. Boy, we sure could use if anybody's listening up there, we sure could use a little bit of extra rain to keep those fires down for the year. It's been an interesting it's been an interesting spring season so far, and we're getting things going on. Good news for those of you who have been concerned about all of the health mandates and everything else that's been going on since the beginning of the pandemic. Alaska's Health Commissioner Adam Crum has said that they are going to be ending a public health emergency order that's been in place since the beginning of the pandemic. The order ends on July 1st, according to KTOO, and the end of the declaration will result in program reductions around the state in various ways. The biggest one, I think, is going to be a reduction in extra food assistance benefits and federal reimbursement rates. Up until now, people who have been receiving food assistance have been receiving an extra portion, apparently. That program, even though the emergency order will end on July the 1st, those extra food allotments will continue on through August, and the federal reimbursement rate is going to change. Up until now, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, has been reimbursing COVID-related spending at 100%. After the declaration ends, it will fall to 90% with a 10% state match. So I'm assuming that's all those free tests and everything else that they've been doing is all part of the COVID spending. So that will go down again to 90% starting on July the 1st. So this is the big deal. Now, this is the same order, by the way, that this is the same declaration that expired last year, and that is when Governor Dunleavy let the declaration expire and saying that the legislature was the proper venue for the extension. They did not renew it, but they did pass legislation allowing the commissioner to declare an emergency, and he did so in May of 2021. And so that new order has been in effect essentially for a year. Crum's order was set to expire when the federal emergency order did, unless he rescinded it. The federal order is expected to run at least through mid-July, so he has ended it slightly early. Now, the Public Health Division says that they're going to continue to offer COVID-related services. They plan on continuing tracking and reporting cases and doing all that, sending out the weekly reports, maintaining the dashboard and everything else. but instead of receiving 100% reimbursement, they will now only receive a 90% reimbursement for that. And so good news for those of us who've been watching and realizing that the pandemic has now become endemic. And this is that we're going to be living with this. We're going to be living with this for the rest of our lives. That's kind of how it works. And now they're finally gearing down. It's amazing government, right? Slow to gear up, slow to gear down, but they are finally doing so. And an interesting story out of must-read Alaska this morning. I don't know how some of you feel about this, but this is an interesting little piece. Congressional candidate Jeff Lofels reported yesterday that Wells Fargo, without notice, closed his campaign account, which had several $1,000s in it. He's been trying to get the money out of it, have them at least give him a cashier's check so he can pay campaign bills that are due to vendors. But he has so far received no reasonable response from the bank, whose representative, apparently after several hours on hold, told him that they will just give him a check. They'll send him a check in the mail. He thinks that the problem is that his campaign manager, Patrick Flynn, has a small interest in a cannabis company, and the bank is known for steering clear of any funds that can be sourced or commingled with dollars related to cannabis. It has happened to candidates before. In 2018, Wells Fargo closed the account of Nikki Fried, who was a former medical marijuana lobbyist and then candidate for Commissioner of Agriculture and Consumer Services in Florida. Fried is now a candidate for governor in Florida. In the case of Lowenfels, he's a known advocate for legalization, and he writes and speaks publicly about the topic. He authored a book called DIY Flowering, Auto Flowering, that's available on Amazon. But he's also an attorney and filed his paperwork properly with the Federal Elections Commission. He runs his campaign by paying attention to detail, he said, and his financial disclosures with the Clerk of Congress are all in compliance. He actually has a compliance officer on contract with the campaign to make sure that he has crossed all the T's and dotted all the I's. While I might not always agree with Lowenfels' politics, I find this highly irregular. The fact that this is an election campaign, this is not a business account. This is an election campaign where he's obviously trying to run for Congress just because he may have an interest in or have people working for him that have an interest in marijuana or whatever. It is legal in the state, and I just find it highly unlikely anyway. It's astonishing. Again, the ever-creeping influence of federal government on every part of our lives is plain to see right here. Again, this is not a business taking monies from, marijuana industry. This is people donating money to a campaign, and I don't care where they got their money. They're exercising their rights under the First Amendment to support the candidate of their choice, whether we agree with them or not. This ought to be chilling to each and every one of you. That the fact that some organization can just, and again, I guess it just reminds us why Wells Fargo continues to have a customer dissatisfaction rating that reaches well beyond the norm. I've known several businesses over the last couple of years that have cut all ties with Wells Fargo because of this. And remember, these are the same people that were out there. They got fined $1 billion or whatever by the government because they were out there, creating new accounts and moving monies around. Their people were working illegally behind the scenes to get bonuses. Wells Fargo, definitely, probably not the first place I would choose to drop a campaign account, or probably any kind of account at this point, because, ow, man. But this just really raised my hackles a little bit. Because why? No reason, no nothing given, no notice. You're in the middle of running a campaign. Boom, your account is closed. Have a nice day. We'll send you a check in the mail. Oh, man, that's not a good look for them. But what are you going to do? All right, we got more coming up. Ben Carpenter is going to be joining us in a hot minute. and we'll be covering the gamut on all kinds of things. I mean, we're just gonna have a chit chat. That's all up directly ahead. It is the Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Wow, I talk for a living. Ready? We're gonna go. We're gonna be right back. I'm gonna go have some more coffee. Back with more right after this.
Our light, our guide, and our trusted friend.
Michael Duke Show.
Liberty baited. That's what it is. It's liberty baited radio. We bait it with liberty and hope somebody comes in and gets caught on it. That's how it works. Hello and guten Morgen, mein Freund. Was ist jetzt los mit dir? What is going on? My daughter had a Wells Fargo account. I couldn't take cash in and deposit into her account. They were restricted from accepting cash. Yeah, I don't know. I've used Wells Fargo for years and not have too many problems with them. But, I mean, like I said, I have spoken to many people who have had nothing but continuous heartache with them. Like I said, I don't think that I would run right into that and be starting a new account there if that was the case, for sure. Liberty baked. Yep, it's a little Liberty baked. Wake and bake with Liberty, baby. All right, we're coming into it. Phone line is up and ready. We've got Representative Ben Carpenter, I believe, on the phone in the virtual green room, eating my virtual donuts and drinking my virtual coffee. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning, Michael. I'm doing very well.
Good.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Good. All right. Well, we're going to be back to you here in just a hot second. I've got to get caught up in the chat room because I've been slacking, so hold the line. Don't eat all the ones with the sprinkles because those are my favorite. All right. Let's see. Good morning. My dad's in the room. Hey, Dad. Greg and David, Hawk, Brian. Good morning to you 6 o'clockers. That's right. This is all the 6 o'clock club. Thank goodness Ben is running unopposed, says Terry. Common sense will prevail in the peninsula. Sounds good to me. Terry then goes on to say, sounds like Massey is running as a puppet. I'm not going to disagree with that. It just, again, the collaborator. The news sucks, says Sandy. Doug Massey is a great human, just like Shower is a good person. Well, I don't know why the news would suck. This is my interpretation of what's going on, Sandy, not the news's interpretation. It's my interpretation. So we'll see what's going on. Okay, she says she doubts that Massey is a puppet, just running against a hometown favorite. All right, yeah. Checks in the mail. Wells Fargo has become woke. That is why I quit them. Done with their garbage. I don't know if they become woke. You'd think if they were woke, they'd be embracing the whole cannabis thing. If that's the true reason why they shut down Lowenfeld's account. But, I would think that the woke banks would be all about that. But I don't know. No notification this morning. Jerica, this is exactly why you should go to YouTube and subscribe to the show and ring the bell on YouTube so that you can make sure you get your notifications every day. That's why you should do that. See? That's why you should do that. So you'll get your notification. In fact, every one of you, all 51 of you who are in the chat room that haven't subscribed and liked my YouTube page yet, I would ask that you do that right now. I'm trying to get to that 1,000 subscriber mark. I've got 3,500 followers on Facebook, but I'm trying to get to that 1,000 subscriber mark on YouTube so that I can start things like super chats and some other things. But I need your help. I need your help. I can't. I've been trying to get a third of my 3,500 followers to go over there, and no, it's not. Not to say. Wells Fargo can't find employees in Bethel, and it's hit or miss if they open the door weekday mornings. Oof. Brian says Wells Fargo manages his mortgage, sent me a check with a note that the escrow account was overfunded. 2 weeks later, I got a demand from them to refund the escrow account. What? I mean, what? Oh, Lord. Lord. Okay. That brings us down to the end here. Wells Fargo, one of the key corporations to write legislators, begging them to take our PFD. Wake up and good morning. There you go. All right, thank you, Carrie. All right, we got more coming up. We're going to be diving into this with Ben Carpenter. That is right now, The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Like and share. Let's do it. All right. Hey, that ding means you're ready to go. Fight's on. Round 3. You ready? No, not really. But it does mean that we're diving into it with our guest this morning, Ben Carpenter, who joins us from an undisclosed secret location somewhere on the peninsula, probably near his kitchen table. Ben Carpenter is with us this morning to talk about all things related to the legislature and the government. Good morning, Mr. Carpenter. How are you, sir?
Good morning. I'm good, and it's not so secret location anymore. This is my third election, and now my address is all over the place.
I know, really. It's almost impossible, right? You're like, wait, you got people showing up right to your door. How does that work? Yeah, so much so, not an undisclosed secret location. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things that people have to give up kind of some of that privacy.
Yeah.
Although I was in the military for 20 years, so I really got used to giving that up a long time ago.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Ben, let's you asked yesterday when I was talking to you about coming on board, you were like, well, what are we going to talk about? And I'm like, well, there's a few things. I mean, first and foremost, this whole new voting system that we're working under here for ballot measure number 2, the ranked choice voting in the jungle primaries, has led to some interesting things. Now, first and foremost, the registration and the filing deadline has passed, and you are the one and only candidate for the new district. What was District 29 is now District 8. And you are the one and only contender for that whole seat. So this leaves you in kind of a unique position. I mean, you're essentially the new representative for District 8, unless, I guess, somebody tries to mount a write-in campaign. And, of course, with a new vote, I think they actually have to get write-ins approved ahead of time so they can appear on the ballot. I mean, it's a mess. But let's talk for just a second about why. Why is Ben Carpenter number one with a bullet? Why is he the only one on the ballot in your area? Do you got a feel for this? You have a sense for what's going on?
Michael, I'm not entirely sure. I'd like to think it's because I'm doing a good job, but I don't know that that's the case. I mean, there's a part of me that says I must have done something wrong. I haven't pissed any of the super right off, and I haven't pissed any of the left off enough to generate a opposition candidate. So
right.
Maybe I didn't do something right.
Yeah,
but I mean, I think that it's healthy to have competition, and my wife is always joking with me because I thrive in that competition is what I enjoy. So I'm a little like a duck out of water here.
Well, I've often said that every candidate should have a challenger, and I was just talking. I was talking a little trash about Doug Massey running against Mike Shower because I think Mike Shower is doing a bang-up job. But at the same time, my mantra has always been every candidate should have a challenger because it keeps, iron sharpens iron, right? So when you go in there and you strike sparks, it keeps your arguments fresh. It keeps you on target. Every candidate, even the good ones, as quote unquote, for whatever your perspective is, I think everybody should be vying and rooting for somebody to have an opponent because, again, it keeps the hottest issues at the top of the mind.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think that if you're happy that there's no opposition, you're not thinking far enough ahead.
Right.
We need people who know how to run in elected races, and we need to have primary opponents who are preparing and building that bench for future campaigns. I mean, just because you run and fail one year doesn't mean you fail the next year.
Right.
It's healthy for our communities to have multiple people trying for these positions. And how do you make a choice if there's no choice?
Right.
It just doesn't make sense.
Well, and overall, what I found very interesting, quite honestly, is the fact that of the 59 seats that are up for election, now there's a handful that are running unopposed, and so you're one of, I think, 4 or 5 that are running unopposed. But we've got another 55 or so seats. Only one of them is passing the threshold of having more than 4 candidates, right? That's District 35 has got 5 candidates, and according to the ranked choice voting, only the top 4 can move forward. So, I mean, at some point, I got to be asking questions like, why are we even bothering to have a primary at all? Because every one of these yahoos is going to end up on the ballot when it's all said and done.
Well, there's some folks that were proponents of ballot measure 2 that, didn't see value in a party primary anyway. So they've effectively eliminated the party primary in all but one race for the state legislature. Now, your primary election still matters for the governor's race and for your statewide races,
right?
And for that one race within the legislature. But yeah, I think there's value to having a party primary where you're narrowing down your choices with more like-minded folks before you go into the arena with folks that aren't so like-minded.
Right. Well, I find it interesting because there's a whole lot of, and maybe in some areas it may have backfired a little bit because now we've got Republican on Republican and Democrat on Democrat in the same races. There is no party to narrow things down, and now you've got to make the choice on the ranked choice situation. This is, it's going to be an interesting election season. And quite honestly, yesterday was the first day that I had seen any kind of informational campaign or media coming out from the State Division of Elections trying to explain to people how this is supposed to work. I mean, those of us who follow politics have probably sussed out exactly what has to come down between the special primary, the special general, the regular primary, the regular general. But it's going to be confusing, especially coming into that August 16th vote, because you'll be having the regular primary alongside the special general. And I think that there's going to be a lot of confused people.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Michael. I think those politicos who are paying attention and always are engaged in politics are going to find it challenging enough, and the folks that are not always engaged it's going to be an eye opener. I mean, they're just not going to know what's going on.
Yeah,
that's the risk.
It's frustrating, and we're seeing some of the same names, repeated in here and revisited. We've seen. Of course, Kathy Giessel it seems like it's a rematch against Roger Holland, as in the last election. And some of these people who you and I have talked about as being, pro-government spend versus pro-PFD spend, or maybe pro-PFD versus anti-PFD. I don't know how we finally left it off when it was all said and done. But essentially people who are pro-bigger government versus people who are pro-private sector. And those seem to be the matches that are matching, that are kind of sizing up in many of these races as you've looked at these, right?
Yeah, I think that there's really 5 of the contested races that are maybe leaning Republican that we really have to watch for. I think districts 10 and 11 and the ones up in the interior, 31, 32, and 34 are all going to make a deciding factor. I think Republicans in the House have a really good shot at having a majority Republican the numbers again, right?
Yeah.
And whether that means we actually can get along and form a majority is another story entirely. But I think that this is probably somewhere around the 23 number in the House. is kind of what I'm thinking.
Well, and I think that's interesting because the Senate has been considered to be pretty stable, but there's been so much infighting going on there that maybe the Senate becomes the unstable one this go around. Because you're right, in District 10, former Representative Craig Johnson is running. He's got some name recognition and some traction in that community, although he's running against two Democrats and a Libertarian. It's going to be an interesting race. And in District 11, which is a brand new open district, you got Ross Beeling and Julie Colombe, who are both Republicans fighting against the nonpartisans in there, Walter Featherly and Jennifer Sohn. Jennifer Sohn is actually more of a Antifa Democrat than anything else. But I mean, it's going to be there's some definite dividing lines in there. You can definitely see that there's some different philosophies that are going on, and these are going to be heavy races. So maybe you do walk away with the 23. But the Senate race is, we've never seen a Senate with, 4 officers just basically said, nope, we're done, including the presiding officer and the minority leader. And, that's some interesting stuff right there as to what's going on in the Senate.
Yeah, I think Jennifer Sohn actually has pulled herself out of the race.
Oh,
maybe not officially, but
yeah.
She's made an announcement a few days ago that she's not in it. So that's another. There's a few of these races that are going to boil down to the Fairbanks ones and District 11 are going to have for the House side are 2 Republicans and 1 Democrat, and that puts us in a precarious position with ranked choice voting.
Right, because
but you're right about the Senate.
Yeah, because of the split vote. I noticed that Rick Castillo in District 9 pulled out. He had been running against Laddie Shaw, but then David Schaff was in there, so it looks like that may be happening. They've got until the 25th to withdraw, and so Rick Castillo is now out of that race, so now it's just a dead head-to-head against Laddie Shaw and David Schaff. So maybe we'll see more of that, where more of these candidates, both on the Democrats and the Republican side, pull out so that there's not multiple candidates in the same race. I mean, this is a whole new strategy, right? I mean, this is all new.
Yeah, we've seen that happen before, where Democrats will fall on their sword and remove their names, but that traditionally doesn't happen with Republicans.
Right.
We like to go to the battle and die on our principles. And in this case, especially in districts 31, 32, and 34 up in the interior, it's gonna matter who gets eliminated first. Assuming the D's vote heavily for the only D in that race and the R's vote for the more conservative, you could have a situation where the more moderate Republican is eliminated in that first round. And then if your conservative has a higher unfavorable rating with the swing voter, then you could see the D get elected in a purple district that should lean Republican.
Right. Well, it's going to be interesting to see now. 31, 32, and 34. 31 is the Bart LeBon seat, and Shelley Wyatt, the Alaska Independence Party candidate, it was denied. So it was just out between Bart LeBon, the incumbent, Maxine Dilbert, the Democrat, and Kelly Nash, who's a registered Republican and a listener to the show here, who's come in as the more conservative candidate to LeBon. It'll be interesting to see how that vote splits out down. That district has always been a troubling district. I mean, remember, LeBon won by 1 vote, 1 single vote against Catherine Dodge back in the day. So that district will be interesting. And then District 32 is my old buddy Van Lawrence, who ran against me when I was on the Assembly. He later on got onto the Assembly, but now he's running as the registered Democrat in that district. And we've got 2 listeners, Timothy Givens and Will Stapp, who are both listeners to the program here. We see him in the chat room quite frequently, who are also running as registered Republicans. Maybe Timothy and Will need to get together and figure out which one of them wants it more, and figure out that we could just get a one-on-one race in there. That would be interesting as well. But, the Grier-Hopkins race, to me, in the interior, is the one that's got the most potential, because there was a lot of thought that Hopkins was not going to come back this year. But apparently he decided to stay in the race, and you've got Frank Tomaszewski, who's been running for quite a while, and I've seen him at several events in Fairbanks when I was up there. So this is going to be an interesting race, to say the least. I mean, may you live in interesting times is definitely not just something that's written on a fortune cookie. It's something that we're living right now.
Absolutely. And that District 34 Representative Hopkins seat is one of the ones that I'm watching. I think that's a toss-up in my book right now.
Yeah, I think it's going to definitely be interesting. But there's lots of different races here that are going to be super interesting. We had a lot of candidates, a lot of incumbents who decided not to either not to rerun, totally retired, or just not rerun for their seat. We've seen a lot of people reach up for the Senate from the House, and so it's going to be a very interesting situation here as we watch this go through. We're talking with Ben Carpenter, who is GOP state rep for District 39 right now. Later on, it's going
29.
29. I'm sorry, 29. It says 29 on the screen. I just said 39. 29, and he's going to be continuing with us here in just a hot second, and we will have more to talk about. The Michael Duke Show continues. It is your home for common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We'll be back with more and more Ben Carpenter right after this. Don't go anywhere.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, we're in the break right now with Ben Carpenter, GOP State Rep District 29. I had 29 up on his thing, and I was looking at 39 on the other one. So anyway, I hate this, Ben, because it takes me years to remember where all the districts lay out, and then they flip them over every time. It's not like they make them even close. It's like, oh, let's just flip-flop the whole map. District 1 was down here at the top. It was at the bottom of the state. Now it's at the top of the state, et cetera, et cetera. It just gets so confusing.
We just got to keep life interesting, don't we?
Exactly. Any other thoughts on the races themselves? We're going to move on to another topic when we return to the radio. Any other thoughts on the election overall? I mean, do you just said that you think that there's a good shot at the House, but what about the Senate? I mean, it has been so contentious with that conservative core inside the caucus that is being fought against. I mean, not even conservative. I guess, again, going back to the axiom or the labeling of small government versus larger government. I mean, what are your thoughts?
So as I look through this, and I've just looked at the precinct numbers, not really having analyzed. I'm sorry, I haven't looked at the precinct numbers. I've just looked at the kind of the historical voting trends, and I think that there's safe 8 seats in the Senate. 8 seats are safe Republican. I think there's probably 5 that lean Republican. So you've got a potential of 13 Republican seats through this next election. I think there's 8 of those 13 that are contested, and I think 2 of those are toss-ups. The Democrats,
that makes
from
it a
the
lot
Democrat
harder.
side, they've got 6 safe seats. I think 1 that leans Democrat, and 5 of those 7 are contested. So it really could go to the Republicans on this. I mean, I think it's our battle to lose, and anyway, I think we're in a good situation.
Yeah. Well, and I think we need to, this is why it behooves us so much to pay attention to, what these people actually believe in. Just don't look at the label at the end of the name. Don't look at the fact that they're an R. Don't look for the elephant or the donkey. Look for who's supporting them. Look for what their comments have been in the past or their actions have been in the past, and make your decision based on that, because it's gotten to the point now that it doesn't matter what animal you wear on your lapel, because you could say that you're a Republican and yet you could be a large government spend, pro-government Republican. And so we need to be looking at, I guess, down into the details of what's going on. Who supports, if somebody is supported by or endorsed by, just to pick a name out of the air, John Coghill, that person probably not going to be at the top of my list because we know what Coghill's propensity is as far as PFDs and crime and government spend and everything else. If somebody is supported by him, that immediately is a red flag for me. We need to be looking down into the details of each of these candidates.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think those questions and the answers to those questions are really important prior to the filing deadline that has already passed.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No, I think
in some cases we may not have gotten the right combination, and now you've got a question that is who's going to win the race, who's electable.
Right.
More electable, especially within a ranked choice voting setting.
Right.
So if we're talking about one of the candidates maybe needing to drop out in order to make it a two-way race, and that's a stronger way to win in that district, then which one steps out? The more conservative one or the more moderate one?
Right. Well,
those are the questions that are going to be a district by district base.
Right. Well, and especially when we have, two Republicans who are duking it out against each other, like in District 32, two Republicans and one Democrat. Now you have to make a choice if they both stay in the race. Which one do you support? And that means you have to look behind the scenes. You have to look to see who they emulate or who is supporting them and everything else. And that, it is a little bit of extra work, but it really behooves us to do that because otherwise we end up with another Kelly Merrick situation or something like that, where, it's surprise, although it shouldn't have been a surprise to anybody who was really paying attention.
Yeah, I agree.
We're going to be jumping into this with Ben Carpenter here in a second. We're going to talk a little bit more about the Fiscal Policy Working Group. We're going to talk about the budgets, and we're going to ask specifically about what's happening with the governor's vetoes. It's been radio silent from the governor for everything, including his campaign. I finally saw some movement yesterday or this morning that they're announcing the opening of a Fairbanks headquarters, but we haven't really heard anything from the governor since the end of session, and I want to know more about that. So we're going to get into that here with Ben Carpenter and talk with him. That reminds us that it's time to jump back into it. Here we go. Please like and share this video. Like and follow the show page. Let's continue on. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio, The Michael Duke Show. All right, we're back now with Ben Carpenter, GOP state rep from District 29. He's going to be continuing with us to the top of the hour. We were just talking about the elections, and we're going to have to keep a close eye on what's happening there. We'll get more breakdown on that as we go through the summer. But let's move on over back to the session and the budget and more. Ben, we are now down. We talked to you right before the end of the last session. Now the session is over. The budget is set. The PFDs are set. Everything is all done. What's your overall take on what transpired and what came out of the legislature this last session? Let's get your hot take on that to begin with.
Well, the operating budget, while I would have liked to seen more reductions, didn't grow significantly, and that's a positive thing for the state. At least it's not a huge negative that it grew substantially. The majority of the spending increase that we saw this year was that we had a very robust capital budget, and we have lots of people from lots of districts clamoring for spending in the capital projects that have, we've had very small capital budgets over the last few years. So the fact that we ended up with a large budget when we had large surpluses didn't surprise me in the least. I saw that coming at the beginning. I said this is going to be a low threat budget.
Right.
The concept of should we make fiscal policy change in a year that we have surplus didn't factor into the calculus of what happened with this majority during this session. Now this session and potentially next year are the years we should be making some structural change, because it would be easier to do with money than it would be in the years previous when we didn't have as much money. So as far as the fiscal policy working group, I think that we've proven that the only reason that we had a fiscal policy working group was to avert the government shutdown last year. And the powers that be have not actually wanted to move forward on any of the recommendations that the fiscal policy working group came with.
Well, which is super interesting because, I mean, this fiscal policy working group was such a disparate bunch. I mean, they were so philosophically opposed. I mean, you had both ends of the spectrum, and I mean, it was just, and yet in the end, when it was all said and done, you guys did some yeoman's work in there and came out with a unanimous decision on a plan that then was immediately apparently just stuffed in a drawer. Thank you for your service. Have a nice day. And that is, I mean, that's it's crazy because you guys all came together with a plan that I thought was very comprehensive and seemed to make sense. And yet it's like nobody wants to stop the crisis, essentially.
Yeah, I would say not nobody. It was just the people who were in the positions of power who didn't want to stop the crisis. And I hate to, I mean, there's a claim that politicians just are power hungry and that's all they care about. But if you want to get anything done, if you want to set agendas and move things forward or prevent things from happening, you have to have the positional power in the legislature to do that, to do either of those things, to stop it from happening or making change. And this last legislature, those who had the positions of power didn't want to move forward with any substantial change or acting upon the fiscal policy working group recommendations.
I'm often reminded of the story about never wrestle with a pig because you figure out that you're both covered in manure at the end and the pig likes it. And I kind of think that is the story here, that they kind of like the crisis mode because it gives them more opportunity to do exactly what they want. The divisiveness is exactly the medicine that they need to be able to get their own agendas pushed through.
It may be the case with some, and I know that there are some folks that thrive on the dysfunction and it makes it easier for them to get what they want. I think that it's probably more likely that it is just very difficult to see the bigger picture and to achieve consensus on what a solution would be to the bigger picture, especially when the state is so divided. Even as we're looking at this election, it's going to be close as to who's going to be in the majority next year in both bodies of the legislature. That's the reality. So finding any sort of agreement on a direction comes down to a few positions of power and who's in it, because we are so divided. And I think that's probably the easier way or the better way to look at it than people that just don't want to do anything. I mean, the other aspect of this too is that your constituencies that are clamoring for change, or at least say they want change, and I'm singling out some business folks here, have been saying that they want some kind of stability for years, decades, and yet
right.
we never really achieve it. So the question I really got is, do you really want it, or is it just popular to say you want it?
Is this the populist, position because it's not going to happen and you just want to look good? It's, again, virtue signaling. Or do you really want to fix and affect change? And you bring up an interesting point. There's been lots of businesses who have taken some of these positions, and some of them is pretty blatantly obvious what's going on. That we saw this with Jim Jensen and Ron Duncan and some of the other major corporations that depend heavily on government spend, and we saw some of the chambers step up as well in some of this stuff. especially in regards to the dividend. What are your thoughts on that? Because let me just say first, I have some very strong opinions about chambers of commerce who weigh in on something like this and say we need to take that money from Alaskans and give it back to government, especially since probably 80% of their own membership is made up of small business. I mean, you're a small business owner. Would you want to belong to a chamber of commerce that sent a letter to the legislature to say, keep that dividend away from the people, we need it for government spend?
Yeah, that frustrates me beyond belief. I don't think that the Alaskans and Americans in general are going to be more free and have more liberty in the future with larger government. I'm a limited government guy. I want to see economic growth in the private sector, not in the government sector. And to the extent that Republicans and Democrats alike choose their business plans and their business models to, they're only going to be successful if they get state spending or federal spending, then that's counter to what I believe is fundamental to securing liberty and prosperity in the future.
Yeah.
If a business says, "Hey, I need state dollars to succeed," then you're really saying, "I need somebody's tax dollars somewhere to support my business."
You've built the wrong.
That's not economic growth.
No, you've built the wrong business model. If you're dependent on government spending, you've built the wrong business model. That's essentially what that comes down to. We're down to the last 2 minutes here, Ben. I do want to ask, where's the governor? I mean, what happened? We were hoping that this budget was still pretty. I know you're saying it was kind of non-offensive, but we were still hoping that the governor would make some cuts, and it's been radio silent from the mansion. Any word on what's happening with that?
So I could be speaking out of turn here because I'm not
just your
fully
thoughts.
in the know, but
just your thoughts.
My understanding is that the governor has not received the budget yet.
Really? He hasn't received it?
So he can't actually, like he could kind of have a concept of what he's going to do, but he hasn't actually received it yet. So
we're going on 3 weeks here, Ben. I mean, how long does it take to transmit it to the governor's office?
Well, from a functional legislature or a dysfunctional one?
Well, exactly. I mean, I think that isn't there a statute that says that they have to get it to him by a set amount of date anyway? I mean, are we beyond that or?
Yeah, you got me. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Well,
either way, it doesn't surprise me that it's taken so long to get to him. I know that from the minority's perspective, we've already communicated with him. We already have shared with him what we think needs to happen and where we're willing to support him. And I'm excited to see what happens.
Well, we are too. We'd like to see something going on. Ben Carpenter, GOP State Rep District 29. My friend, thank you for coming in and being part of it today.
Thanks for having me. It's always fun.
Yep. Hold the line for just a second, Ben. All right, folks. Coming up next, hour 2, should be State Senator Mike Shower. We're expecting him to be ringing into us. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Back with more right after this. So, Representative Kevin McCabe just sounded off in the chat room and said the budget has not been transmitted yet. Time compression as a weapon. And is that, I mean, does that seem plausible to you, Ben? I mean, that they're waiting and waiting and waiting to give him as little time as possible to get whatever vetoes he's going to get in on this? Is that, does that sound about right from your perspective?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. I'm a little shocked that this gamesmanship is continuing into the end of the session, especially since we've got this big election cycle going on. But I guess again, some people just don't want to let go of whatever power that they seem to have available to him. If he does get it, you have no expectation, you have no idea. You guys have expressed your thoughts on it, but you have no idea or indication from the governor what he may be or may not be supporting?
No, I would let the governor speak for himself on that.
Okay. It's so frustrating. I can't imagine how frustrating it is to actually be hip deep in it. It's so frustrating to watch from the outside. I'll give you final thoughts here, Ben, on the budget, the vetoes, and the upcoming election and the session that's coming up. Your final thoughts. I'll give you the floor here for the last couple minutes in case. And if there was something else that we didn't talk about that you want to talk about, we got about 4 minutes here.
Yeah, no, I am hopeful that when the budget finally gets to the governor, that he is follows through with conservative principles and reduces the size of the budget. The difficulty in that is going to be that every constituency has something that matters to them, and that's going to be a difficult call for him. I think there are some projects that don't need to be funded from state. If you're talking about diving boards, I think that's a local issue and doesn't need to be a state issue. If you're talking about road maintenance on state roads, then that's a state issue. So there are things that should be cut out of the budget, the capital spend.
Right.
That's my hope, is that we see a little bit of reduction. I had hoped that we would put more money away in savings than we did for a future rainy day. And although I don't believe the governor really has the capability to do that, that's one of the wishes that I wish we had done better at for this budget. I don't think it puts enough away. But that was a call that was made at the very beginning. I requested to put an amendment in at the budget to put a $250 million into the CBR, and it was shot down. So we didn't want to. We want to say that we're putting things away in savings, but we didn't actually want to do it.
Well, I mean, and that's the big thing. I mean, we owe by the Constitution. That's not a statute that's easily ignored. We owe the CBR like $10 billion, and yet instead of putting excess monies away into the CBR where it really belongs, we even bypass that and are putting monies instead in the ERA or in the SBR because they're more easily obtainable. They don't want to put the money out of reach because if they put it in the ERA, it requires a supermajority vote to get it back out.
Yeah. Yep. The money in the savings at this point it serves two purposes. One, it serves a purpose in case we have low oil prices in the future and continued strife over how to fund our state government to what size it needs to be. And two, it affords us opportunities when we have low oil prices to actually make some structural change. It would surprise me if we're going to find a collective will to make any sort of move towards the fiscal policy working group recommendations while we have surplus money.
Right.
It goes counter to human nature. But
yeah.
when we have money problems, then we have the urgency to make some change. And if we've got some savings, that enables us to do something in that regard. So
right.
Anyway, I would like to think that if the Republicans get put in charge next year, that we have the will to make some systemic changes, but we'll see what happens.
All right. Well, Ben Carpenter, thank you so much for coming on board this morning. We appreciate you being part of it. As always, appreciate your time. I know you're a busy guy. Get out there and get some flowers done, huh?
Thanks, Michael. Anytime.
All right, Ben. Appreciate it. Thank you for sounding off this morning. Representative Ben Carpenter, our guest this morning on the program, discussing, well, everything related to politics and more. All right. That clears the lines there. We're going to be jumping back in here, hoping to hear from State Senator Mike Shower in just a hot second, and we'll get him on there. Donna Ardwin is in the chat room, and as always, I love talking with her. We're trying to I need to set up a time with Donna to have her come on and discuss. We had an interesting discussion with some of the Libertarian candidates last week about the CAFR, C-A-F-R, and Donna has said that she would be welcome to come on the program and talk about that and the audits. So we're going to try and set up a time with her, maybe the first part of next week, where we can go over this and talk about that. But Donna is in the chat room, and she said, after we were discussing the governor and the budget and time compression as a weapon, she said the time crunch shouldn't make a difference. The governor's staff works with him in advance to mark up a copy of the bill. When the governor receives the enrolled bill, he just needs to replicate his mocked up bill. And so, yeah, I think that's a That's some good news, and she would know since she's part of that as all the way through. All right, let's see if we can get Mike Shower on the phone here real quick, and we'll get things ready for hour 2. Get ready to kick things off and be ready to get the job done here. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. He sent me a text last night. Am I on tomorrow? I was already asleep. Yes, you're on. All right, here we go. Common sense radio. Let's do this thing.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Across the world on the interwebs at michaeldukeshow.com. That is where you go to get the podcast and the live stream and all of our social media links and all the stations and translators that we are connected to. And, of course, we are broadcasting live across the state of Alaska on all of those translators and stations and everything else. Welcome to the program. It is the Wednesday edition of the Michael Duke Show, and we are ready to we're ready to go. We're ready to rock and roll. Hour 2, we're expecting to hear from State Senator Mike Shower, who is coming on for the Shower Hour of Power. Now, ironically enough, he sent me a message late. I mean, I was already well in bed by this time. He sent me a message, says, am I on tomorrow? Yes, you are. Yes, you are. And I haven't been able to, he hasn't called in, and I've been trying to ring him up here the last few minutes during the commercial break, and we haven't heard from him. So I'm going to try again. We'll reach out to see if we can get him on. If not, we'll open up the phone lines for just a minute or so. Maybe he will call in here shortly, and we'll get him squared away for the Shower Hour of Power to talk to him about all the things we just talked about with Representative Ben Carpenter. Ben is he laid out some interesting things for us there, and I'd like to hear more about it. All right, Donna Ardwin. Donna Ardwin is in the chat room, and we were talking about time compression as a weapon. Where he said, where Ben said he wasn't even sure that the governor had the budget yet to veto. And there was some discussion about whether or not that was being used, again, time compression as a weapon, which seems to be one of the favorite tactics of the powers that be, the good old boys network in the legislature, that they like to use that against legislators. But Donna, who's been through a few of these budget cycles, says the time crunch shouldn't make a difference. The governor's staff works with him in advance to mark up a copy of the bill. When the governor receives the enrolled bill, he just needs to replicate his mocked-up bill with the cuts inside of it. And I'd like to see it. I would like to see what's going on. So we're gonna see what's going on. I see Michelle Shower is in the chat room this morning as well. Hey, go shake your hubby up and tell him to give me a call. We're waiting for his call right now. He sent me an email last night, or a text message at like 10:45 at night. I was already asleep because I got to get up early in the morning to do this stuff. I sleep well on this thing. All right. Well, while we're waiting for Mike Shower to show up, we will open up the phone lines to take some calls from you if you would like. The number to call is 907-433-3150, 907-433-3150, powered by our friends at Satellite West. They are providing us with sponsorship for the program and for the call-in line this morning. They are your communications specialists at Satellite West. You can find out more at satellitewest.com. We'd love to hear from you and hear from them, and thank them for sponsoring the program across the state of Alaska today as well. Some of the other notes from the trail, some interesting things. If you've been following the big race for the special election for the congressional seat, as of Monday, the Division of Election had received 110,000 plus ballots, and that means that of those ballots, 108,480 were mailed in, which means just under 2,000 of them were handed into the Division of Elections. They also received ballots that were undeliverable. The division now counts 508,000 ballots as actually deliverable to voters, meaning they had over 50,000 ballots that, just came back or didn't go anywhere. The earlier number was 563,000. But according to Must Read, that puts the turnout so far at about 21.65%. Now, remember, if you have your ballot in hand and you haven't turned it in yet or you haven't mailed it in, you have until Saturday to postmark it and send it in. So what happens after that? Well, they begin tabulating all the ballots that they've already received at 8 p.m. on June the 11th, which is election night. The absentee review boards have been reviewing the ballot envelopes for eligibility since May the 27th. So the painstaking work of determining eligibility and no duplicate ballots will be done mostly by 8 p.m. on the 11th. And the first tranche of ballots will be counted and reported about 8:30 to 9 p.m. on Saturday. So the same night, we'll start hearing where the elections sit. And it's unsure if there will be additional updates on the night of June the 11th after their first reported count. But according to the division website, they will be updating the initial vote count first on the 11th, that night that the polls close. Then the next count will be on June 15th, then June 17th, then June 21. Essentially 2 to 3 days. Every 2 to 3 days, you'll get a new release. And then they have to certify the election by June the 25th. So they've got to get it all done because, again, then the next round for the general election will be on August the 16th. One of the other interesting comments in this piece is that that Josh Revak is kind of gone MIA. That he has not posted a single thing on Facebook from his campaign for over 3 weeks. I think he was expecting a lot more horsepower to come out when he got the endorsement of Don Young's widow and, was saying that he had been tapped to replace Don Young. I think he was expecting a lot more support. But again, in a race with 48 players, it's hard to, nobody. I was speaking with a candidate the other day who shall remain nameless for the moment, but basically they said, yeah, it's pretty hard when you start talking and you start, asking people for money and they're like, oh, there's 48. They're waiting for this thing to narrow down to where they have only 4 candidates. That the primary is going to be hard. When you get a primary that's got that many people, it's very, very hard for folks to be all part of that because they want to back a winner. They don't want to throw their money away. But we'll see what happens. Let's go over to the chat room right now and to the phone lines and see what you guys have to say this morning. Good morning. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Randy in Fairbanks.
Morning, Randy. What's on your mind?
Well, yesterday I finally got around to digging through my mail and getting out my ballot. I thought I better do something before 11th sneaks up on me. And I read everything, looked at everything. One thing that caught my eye was in the instructions here, it says number 1, vote ballot. It says fill the oval for one candidate next to your choice using blue or black pen. If you make a mistake voting, call the election office below to request a replacement ballot or draw a line through the oval of the candidate you voted. Write no next to it, and then continue voting by filling in the oval next to your choice.
Right.
For example, and they show a picture of
right.
through. And I thought, uh-oh, I hope nobody abuses that, with all these mail-in vote ballots floating around and people saying, oh, let me take your ballot down to the mailbox. And I wonder if anybody at all, probably not, hardly much will happen like this, but somebody could just cross out your vote and put in their candidate and mail it off. That seems like a little avenue for fraud, possibly,
Yeah.
But anyway, I decided, I was almost thinking I'll read it, I'll fill it out, I'll mail it, I'll not mail it. I plan to go down to the election office and take it down personally. And but then I thought, no, I don't even like early voting. I don't like the whole idea of it unless you're doing an absentee ballot and you're really going to be out of town or something like that. But I think I'll do it at the last possible time, the last possible day, like normal. And but then I thought, oh, it's on Saturday. June 11th is on Saturday, and I wonder if I hope it won't be closed or something. But I looked up because down here in the final step it said mail your ballot for this all by mail special primary election. Postage is prepaid. It must be postmarked by June 11th. Blah blah. Or you may drop off your ballot at any voting location in Alaska. This includes absentee voting and early voting locations. To find a drop-off location, visit our website at www.elections.alaska.gov. Anyway, I went to that website, and it looks like, well, at least for Fairbanks, and I guess anyway, I'll talk about Fairbanks. I thought, well, does this mean they're having a bunch of drop boxes all scattered all over town, or what does it mean? But it looks like it's just on 7th Avenue at the State Building, at the elections office.
Right.
And then I guess they'll be open all the way till 8 p.m. on Saturday. So I guess I can do this on Saturday as if I'm in a normal thing. And however, because it's just one, I thought, well, is it going to be crowded? Well, most people are mailing it, I guess, so maybe it won't, or maybe it will be, particularly since you got to get even though you're going directly down there, I guess I'll still have to get my signature verified by the official down there, and I don't know if it'll be a long line of people trying to get there. So I want to make sure I don't get there. I need to get there as soon as I can.
Randy, just
early on Saturday.
Randy, just take your ballot to work and have one of your coworkers validate your signature, and then just walk it in and hand it over. Make it easy. There's no sense in complicating this, and you can do it. And you can do it ahead of time. You don't have to wait for that day. You can do it ahead of time. I know you don't like early voting, but there it is. It's right there. It's available to you. You can go drop it off. You don't have to mess around with it. So don't overcomplicate things, my friend. I know that is your want, but make it easy on yourself. Just go ahead and get it validated by a friend and turn it in. Thank you, Randy, for your call. Hey, look, the phone just rang, and that means that it might be time. That's right, time for the shower hour of power. What are you doing sending me a text message at 10:35 at night? I mean, come on, I'm asleep. I need that beauty rest. You can see the face. I need it.
Well, what are you talking about?
What are you talking about?
You're a handsome man. You're not only handsome, you're very powerful.
Handsome and powerful. Boy, you really are asleep, aren't you? It's amazing stuff. Mike Shower joins us this morning. How are you, my friend?
I am fine. I am very happy to no longer be in Juneau. I can tell you that.
Yeah, no, it is. It's amazing stuff. Are you fully rested now that you've had a couple weeks to rest and recreate and kind of rejuvenate? Did you pull all the feelers in and just kind of did you hermit up for a couple weeks or what?
Oh yeah, there's so much work to do at home and garden, yard, house. 4 months of not being there, and it's not like you just went home and sat there and had coffee. It's like I was working my tail off, but fun stuff. Your own house, your own yard, and especially the garden stuff. I mean, I love to garden, Michelle, getting everything ready and greenhouse and all that. So A lot of work, but kind of fun work, kind of mindless work,
relaxing.
Yes. So that's been really nice. And we've had some really good weather. I mean, it's just hot and sunny. So it was just, a lot of time with the family, grandkids over. So it's been nice.
Good.
Do that.
Well, before we get into the danger zone, let's take a quick break, and we'll be back since we're right up against it. Mike Shower is our guest. It is the Shower Hour of Power, or in this case, the 43 minutes of power. We're going to be back with more. Don't go anywhere. We will continue our discussions and get a chance to see what Mike Shower has to say. Paul said he saw Wilikowski at Costco yesterday. He looked tired, too. Every legislator that I've talked to so far has been exhausted. They're just like, I talked to a Democrat here the other day that I ran into, and they were like, even they are exhausted. So we'll get the full take here in just a moment from Mike Shower. Back with more, The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio.
We're broadcasting live through a series of tubes.
Allowing all of these entities to provide streaming stuff going on the internet.
Well, it's kind of hard to explain. Sorry. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
So the comment that wins the internet today, was, where's Dozer? Is he dozing? Oh, my friend. It's pretty amazing. So are you ready to face this madness again already? I mean, are you, this is the question that I ask all the first-year politicians, right? When exactly did you lose your mind?
That's a great question.
That's exactly, and I'm sure Michelle is over there rolling her eyes. But when exactly did you lose your mind and do this? Are you sure you're ready for another bout of this, another 2 years of absolute mayhem and madness?
No, I'm not absolutely ready. I'm just, like I said, Mike, there's two things to consider. One is, what's going to happen with the Constitutional Convention? Keeping my fingers crossed that people are going to see through the charade, the lies, the spin, the fear, and vote yes, and give us a chance to actually take some power back from all the special interests in government that controls everything. So that's number one. So I want to be around for that, right? What happens if we write the rules,
right? Which
we would, and then I want to be there, and I want to make sure we get it right and try to make sure that those powers don't take control of it and do it wrong, right? I want to make sure it's done right. So that's number one. And that's such a big deal. That is such a potential, for like a person, except the state, life-altering moment, and I want to be there and make sure that, I can have influence on that and help guide it. So that's number one. Number two, look at the numbers, brother. We're looking at least a quarter or more of the Senate changing hands, at least, right? Minimum. With new people and significant changes in the power dynamics. And then the same thing in the House. You've had at this point, 10, 12 different legislators just say, well, I'm not even coming back.
Right.
Run again, plus some races that are definitely going to change hands. So there's potential to come back and see that, regardless of the Constitutional Convention question, so much change in the power dynamics that maybe perhaps just for once, I'll actually be able to look at a House and a Senate controlled by Republicans that don't sell their souls to the far left Democrats, the progressives and the Marxists, socialists, whatever they have.
The crony capitalist,
all of that.
Yeah, the crony capitalist Republicans who basically want to protect the government spend, right?
Yeah, and maybe with a governor, all three, if you will, bodies aligned, be able to move some things forward, because it's, as you've seen for 5 years, it's been an absolute nightmare. So keeping my fingers crossed that maybe between those two things being there with some changes, and I hate to be the eternal optimist when we always get disappointed every single year, somebody sells their soul like Kelly Merrick, and there it goes again.
Right.
That we would have the chance to actually move some things. And get something done.
It's interesting. I mean, you mentioned the Constitutional Convention, and I'll be honest, you obviously got some people spooked about this because they've already formed a committee. They've already put it together. They've got a clever name, and they, from my understanding, they're already out there shopping $100,000 media ad campaign to try and convince people not to vote for the Constitutional Convention. So you've obviously got some, not you, but I mean, the people who are supporting the CONCON have obviously got some of these folks scared. But I think it's also going to come down to, they're going to need some organization. They're going to need some, when you've already got the other side putting together a $100,000 media buy, you best get together and figure out who's going to be supporting this and start raising some money, because this is going to be a battle for the heart and soul of Alaska.
No, I know, and I'm definitely trying to do that with some benefactors and some people that want to help us, get this together, because we need organization. I just couldn't really do anything during the session, and people wanted me to come home day one, this, that, the other way. Guys, I need a week or two to breathe here. I'm tired. I got to go back to work. I have another job, so I'm going to be busy. No worries. I mean, I can finish on that, but it's just, there's a lot going on, and we need that help and that money. But Mike, I have spooked them because I've been the loudest voice so far on it. They are going to play the fear mongering card. So let's see how this plays out.
All right. The ding means time to get back to it. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Like and share, like and share. Here we go. All right, we're continuing now. State Senator Mike Shower joins us for what we lovingly call the Shower Hour of Power. Coming on board after a 2-week hiatus, he's full of P&V, I'm sure, and ready to go, ready to rock and roll. Facing this, it's like eating broccoli before you get to the dessert. I know it's tough stuff, but you got to do it. You were just talking about one of your big focuses coming into this, not only obviously for re-election, which we're going to get into here in just a second, but you mentioned the CONCON, and that's a big topic that I wanted to take on with you this hour anyway. I mean, this is really... Now, there's lots of potential, as we were just talking about during the break. There's lots of potential for turnover in the legislature. I mean, we've got almost a full quarter of the legislature that's just gone. They just decided not to rerun. They decided not, or they're changing seats or whatever. So there is an opportunity here potentially to have a legislature that's controlled by the more conservative, fiscally conservative elements in both the House and the Senate. But obviously, the whole card is always going to be the CONCON, which you have been one of the most vocal proponents of, and that's led obviously to some opposition and everything else. What's your tact here? What's your plan? In talking about the Constitutional Convention.
Well, I needed to, set a week or two off to kind of breathe and recharge the batteries before I go back to work. And then, of course, all of the legislative stuff and, then people run seats and all that. But, I'm trying to find benefactors, people that will help underwrite and provide funding, because you're going to need funding, right? No bucks, no Buck Rogers. And you got to be able to sell the message and explain to people. You're going to have to buy advertisements in the Anchorage Democratic News and the Juneau Empire and the Fairbanks News Miner, the radio stations, digital. And that all takes, just like a campaign for anything, it takes money and it takes, time and effort. And people are going to need to hear the why should I vote yes, because all they're going to hear right now from most people, the big money, the big unions, the folks that already have tons of money, right? Businesses, big unions, all that stuff. They're going to spend a ton of money to make sure that Constitution isn't touched. Why, Mike? Because they know they've got the game is rigged, and it's rigged in their favor, and they know it, and they are scared to death. Why is the special interest scared? Why are they spooked, as you called it on the break? Because they know if the people have a chance to elect good delegates and change the Constitution in a way that might take away their power, well, then you just hit their most precious crown jewel. Right. The power to control the money, the spend, everything that happens in Juneau and the Capitol. This state is run by special interest, lobbyists, all that money, that power. if the people have a chance to take some of that back and say enact a spending cap, right? A real solid spending cap, if they have a chance to put the cost or the permanent fund dividend in, so it's taken away from special interests being able to take it forever. If those things happen, then they lose a lot of their control over the process, and they're scared to death and angry. And Mike, all you got to do is look at the numbers. Look at who is opposing a constitutional convention. Like I've said many times on the show, that's all you need to know of why you should vote yes. Kathy Giesel, staunchly opposed to a constitution. John Coghill, all the big union leaders, many of the big businesses, they do not want a constitutional convention.
Right. Well, this group that's the group that's opposing it. First of all, clever name. I got to give them props for that. The name of their group is Defend Our Constitution. That's the name of the group. But it is
Defend Our Power.
Yeah, exactly. Co-chaired by Kathy Giesel, John Coghill, Bryce Edgmond, Luke Hopkins, Joel Hall, Bruce Botello. This is a who's who of big government spending. It really is.
Big government, special interests, lobbyist power. Look at the names, Mike. Look at who it is. That's all you need to know to go, yeah, I got to vote for this thing, because if these people are opposing it, I should be for it. I mean, unless you're for lobbyists and special interests and big unions and big corporations and chambers of commerce and all of those, unless you want them to continue to maintain power, take away your PFD, spend what they want, have unlimited control of your government, unless that's what you want, I would recommend you vote yes for a constitutional convention. The fact that they are scared and spooked beyond all reason tells you that you ought to vote yes for this, because they know what's at stake. And it's not, oh my God, the Constitution is going to be ripped apart and torn. The state's going to be torn apart to pieces. And no, that's not what it is. It's like, I'm going to lose my chance to be at the trough of government spending and money. I'm going to lose my chance to control all policy and power. I'm going to lose my chance to be the one in charge and a modern day king or queen. That's what's at stake, Mike.
Yeah.
That's why they're scared of it, because they know it equals power being put back in the hands of the people, and the party, at least some part of the party in Juneau, might be over.
Right.
That's what they don't like.
And for those of you who are keeping track at home, some of the other names associated with this coalition members, this is the who's who. I mean, it's Scott Kendall, it's Steve Lindbeck, it's Susan LaFrance, it is Libby Bacalar. I mean, if you know these names and you know what they stand for, you're like, what? What? I mean, this is some crazy stuff right here.
Tell me one pro PFD, one pro smaller, less powerful government, one less government spend. Tell me one name on that list that truly, honestly stands for any of those things.
Yeah. No.
Not one of them. Every one of those is far left or supposedly a Republican that clearly is for, they're anti-PFD. They're for bigger government. They are for control of government with lobbyists. They're longtime politicians. They're deep state type people. Anyways, it's just the list is a long and distinguished list of those people. And anybody that pays attention on your program or anywhere else, this is the thing, Mike. This is why you need that campaign, right? This is why you're going to need money and advertisements in the Anchorage Daily Democratic News and others, because people don't know. They don't understand all this. I don't know how you reach 736,000 people, enough of those voters to get them to vote yes. We're going to have to do that. And that's why you need the campaign, because they're not going to know. And they're going to see these people spending money in a big spread in the ADN. And it's going to say, oh, you got to protect the Constitution because they're going to tear it apart. It's going to be terrible. And what they're not going to tell you is that, but make sure that, special interests can still control the state, and we're going to take your PFD. They're not going to say that in the advertisement. They're going to say this is dangerous and money's going to flow into the state. They're going to tear up the Constitution. No.
And again, go right down to the financial disclosure. Top three contributors are NEA Alaska, David Gottstein, and Judge Nisi Steinkruger. Those are the top three. I mean, again, all you have to do is look who's behind. But again, this is the battle we're going to be fighting. And like I said, they're already talking about a $100,000 media blitz to try and convince people that this is the worst thing since polio or something. So, I mean, it's going to be an exciting challenge, but you're going to be working on that as well as your campaign, right?
Yeah, great. I know. Got to just have more work to do. What's the we used to have a saying in the military, Mike? The reward for good work was more work.
Yes,
So.
exactly. This is and never volunteer. That was the two things. All right. So the con is obviously going to be an integral part. It is the sword of Damocles that is hanging over these folks. Maybe we get a good makeup in the legislature and we're able to take back more of a control with a conservative, smaller government coalition of people. I don't care if they're Democrats or Republicans at this point, as long as they are committed to a smaller government footprint and a full PFD. I think that is the important part. But again, it all comes back down to the races. And I'm assuming over this 2 weeks you have had a chance to digest a bit of what the races are looking like around the state. I mean, the Senate, actually, Must-Read had an article the other day saying that, the House has been the real contentious thing, but this year it's probably going to be the Senate that's kind of contentious because, again, it's the first time ever that both the presiding officer and the minority leader have both said, no, we're done, and walked out. And so there's some potential in here for some real upsets in the Senate. What say you?
Yeah, I actually talked to Suzanne, before she wrote that article, and I'm sure she talked to a number of legislators to get a feel for it. But I told her that very thing. I mean, the essence of her article is what I told her. I said, I expect, and of course it all depends. You never know, last minute races and ranked choice voting and all this crap. I mean, it could be upside down, but I expect the House to actually be stronger and have a chance for a Republican coalition leading it for the first time in 5 years, really, since I've been there. And I actually believe that, the Senate is going to be more challenging this year because you're going to see that, if you look at, let's just say we had 13 Republicans come back. Well, the old guard has been dying off. They've been getting voted out. The incumbents have been going away, et cetera. And the power dynamics are shifting. And if you look at all the people that are not running and coming back, they've all been, for the most part, like anti-PFD, that crowd, right? And,
right.
Likely to be replaced by people that are more, for the PFD at some level, at least. I mean, depending on what they say, of course, and all the political spin. I believe in a reasonable, and sustainable PFD. Okay, what does that mean?
I believe in an affordable PFD.
It's back to that. What does that mean? I support PFD, a $1 PFD, the $500 PFD, statutory PFD. What is that? You got to ask that question, right? Like I told you, do you support a binding caucus? Well, I'll wait until I get there. Nope, not good enough answer, Bubba. I want to know now. I want a yes or no. And when they're, politicians, they will give you that answer. So that's going to be, one of those things we're going to have to see. But I do believe that the Senate is going to be interesting because you got the Stevens, Stedman, Bishop pact, and those guys with Hoffman have been very tight. And they are the only four left that have been there a long time, right? Since 2005, everybody else has changed hands in that Senate, every seat of the 60 legislators. The only four that have been there consistently since that time were Hoffman, Stedman, Stevens, and who am I forgetting?
Bishop.
Hoffman, no, Bishop was only there since like 2013 or something, or 20. He wasn't the longest. I'm forgetting one. There's four. Anyways, yeah. So Stevens, Stedman, Hoffman, and somebody. I don't know, but that's it. But in the Senate, there's your four or your three, kind of power players. And Bishop is, kind of aligned with them as far as a group. So you look at that, you go, well, if we come back with 13 Republicans again, depending on the flavor and who they are, those three have, easily joined the Muskox caucus and I have no doubt would probably do it again, which means if you come back with 7 Democrats, now you're at a 10-10. Well, who's going to throw their, card in which direction, right? I mean, you look at like Donnie Olson has been very supportive of a full PFD. He's pro-life. He's pro-gun. He's not really a Democrat, and has bucked his caucus on the PFD repeatedly, like with Wielechowski and Kawasaki. So, it's an interesting dynamic, Mike. This is not coming back with 13 Republicans in the standard. Hoffman joins the Republicans and binding caucus, and there's like 6, 7 of them, and it's a split like it's been for a couple of years, and there's a Republican majority, but not really, and then who's in control of it? Because the old power brokers have always, been able to weasel their way in, and this last 2 years didn't go so well. So it will be interesting to see if we come back with 8 or 9, right? That's more of a 10-10 split because those Republican names that are probably coming back, are going to be key players. I mean, I literally look at it like we may end up just like the House. Not really sure what we're going to do because we're ready to nearly 10-10 split. So who's going to sell their soul? A one-person majority is not much of a majority, as you saw in the House the last 2 years. So I don't know.
Well, and historically, we've seen a bipartisan coalition in the Senate before. They were the ones that lived on that for quite a while, utilizing the Bush caucus with more of the pro-government spend Republicans, and the conservatives were the ones that were in the minority locked out. So we've seen this before. We've seen this dance before. This is not surprising.
And it's not out of the realm of possibility at all, because, like I said, those Republicans, those several Republicans that have done this before. So to say, well, maybe it's not going to happen that way. Like you said, they've done it before, so they very well might do it again. And if that happens, of course, the Democrats that come back, they would love nothing more than to have control of committees and whatever else may happen. So they're not going to think twice about, whatever they might do long term. So it will be interesting to see. Now, that would be a fascinating dynamic in the sense of now it's reversed. And, are we back to, let's just say Dunleavy gets reelected? If it was Dunleavy and a strong House, now you got a Senate that's going to fight him. I mean, once again, here we go, probably back to gridlock and can't get anything done. Why I keep telling people, why do you want to take chances on this legislature? How many times do you have to go through? Maybe this time, Charlie Brown, just vote yes on the con and take your power back, folks. Do it yourself. And don't worry about what the legislature is going to do. Who cares? And then hope we got a good lieutenant governor that helps, set up the timing and whatnot that makes it good, because a smart lieutenant governor would make the thing happen in January, right? There will be no legislators at that constitutional convention.
Right. So. Mike Shower is our guest, GOP state senator, currently for District E, running for District O. We're going to continue our discussion with him here in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show continues. We'll have more discussions and talk about the seat for District O as well. That's all coming up. You're home for common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
What is that?
Common sense. Regularly heard on American radio. Michael Duke Show. Radio.
Well, there's some interesting races out there for sure. The ADN actually had, Nat Hers actually had a pretty good breakdown of it, although I did love some of the language, and we'll talk about that here in a second. But there are some interesting races. Scott Kawasaki, who narrowly won that seat from Pete Kelly back in the day, is back up for re-election, but he's going to be facing off against Jimmy Matherly, who is a pretty popular mayor in the city of Fairbanks. That's one race that I think is going to be super interesting. What are the other ones that you think are going to be harder? I mean, we got District L, which is Kelly Merrick versus Ken McCarty, and then, of course, two other Republicans, but really it's McCarty or Merrick who are going to be the powerhouses in that race. Any thoughts on any of the other races specifically?
Well, you named that one there with Merrick and McCarty. That's a pretty important race, right? Because Kelly Merrick's already shown she'll sell her soul in a heartbeat to the Democrats, so I can't trust her. As far as I'm concerned, her coming into the Senate as a Republican means nothing to me, because I could just see her going over to the Democrats going, yeah, give me a co-chair of finance. I'll sell my soul for 4 years. So I'm like, great. So
right.
That's a no-brainer to me that, I hope McCarty wins that one, because he is stuck with the Republican, minority or group in the House this entire time. So at least has shown he can be trusted to do that much. So I hope that's a race that's, in my opinion, the race for that seat's very important, especially with the gerrymandering that happened with the non-activist courts over the redistricting, who have essentially gerrymandered a free Democratic seat out of Anchorage for the Senate. So with that Merrick McCarty race is very important. The Roger Holland race with Giesel being back in, that's another one that's important, because Giesel's of the whole, anti-PFD, crowd to begin with, and she slaughters her Republican colleagues like she did. She takes away their chairmanships, and slaughters the power of their ability to represent. So she doesn't just talk, right? She shows she'll wield that iron fist of power. So Giesel does not need to come back. We've seen that person around for a decade.
Right. This
so
is
that's another race.
It's a rematch, right? I mean, this is the rematch between Holland and Giesel with some extra folks thrown in at this point.
It is. So that's an important one. Those two there, based on their past history and demonstrated. Of course, I have a challenger now. I was hoping I wouldn't have to, because my goal was, to be able to help in these other races and get good people back that would allow us to have both bodies, under Republican control, but the Republican control that would hopefully be able to solve some, stuff, not be split like we've been. But,
right.
So now I'm going to have to, spend time and effort on that too. That's the way it goes. But I was hoping to be able to focus my time and energy on some of these other races, plus the Constitutional Convention. That's perhaps the most disappointing part, is I'm going to have to split my energy now, which is not going to be helpful.
Right. We're going to talk about that more. I'm interested in the matchup between Clayman and Costello.
That's another one.
Also, the Peninsula race with Babcock, since Machicki bowed out. There are some pivotal races around the state. There's a half a dozen, I think, in the Senate that are going to be very, very telling.
Stevens even has a challenger now that apparently has a chance to make up some ground, because Gary's been around a long time. He's one of those 20-year legislators, 2 decades plus. And I think people are starting to get kind of anti the old incumbent, right? The old legislators that have been around forever. Right. That's one. That's one of several. There's a lot of interesting stuff percolating out in Bethel around Hoffman's race that might be an interesting dynamic to watch too, because I'm reading about some accusations of the fact that he lives really in Anchorage, doesn't live in the district, and somebody's been sending me stuff. I'm like, ooh. That's like being forwarded as an actual allegation to the Division of Elections. And I go, that's significant, because that can have quite the impact on a race. If you find out a person is not even eligible, that's been doing this for years and was told this, and Division of Elections did nothing. So that doesn't sound, that's just, I've just been keeping my eye on that one, because that's been percolating through several sources lately watching it. So that's an interesting one. So there's just a lot this year with the people bowing out of races, with the dynamics of what's happening in the races, long-term politicians and life. Typically the people are have been anti-long-serving politicians, and some tight races with people, like you said, like Kawasaki with the mayor of Fairbanks. That's different. It's not just a guy running. It's a guy that people know the name in that district and generally have been pretty happy with them. So that's quite the dynamic, right? You talked about Tuckerman, down there. So there's just, all over the state, Mike, this is not just a couple key races. Look at, for example, a fascinating one is Drummond versus Fields, right?
Right.
There's 2 union crony, far left politician Democrats, and they're going to have to fight each other in the same district. That's like fascinating in a way. That's
like Guarantar versus Forrest Dunbar.
Another one, right?
That race is like, oof. God, not that Guarantar, meets my criteria for most things, but in that race, it's pretty obvious who would need to win that race just out of that alone. It's exciting stuff. All right, we're going to get back into it. Here we go. Jumping back in, the Michael Duke Show. Share and like, subscribe, and ring the bell on YouTube. Let's get to it. All right, we're continuing now. Mike Shower's our guest. We're down into the final little piece here of the Shower Hour of Power. And we've been talking about elections and some of the different races. I was just talking about the Guarantar and Forrest Dunbar race, and you were talking about the Zach Fields and Harriet Drummond. Maybe this redistricting didn't help all of them. And, of course, the ranked choice voting is going to make it very interesting. There's going to be some interesting races with just, when you choose the lesser of 2 evils, I guess, in those districts.
Yeah, that's definitely the case. There's no doubt. Some of those are, you look at the Drummond Fields race and go 2 far left Democrats. and they've got to compete with each other. So that's not, from our perspective as conservatives or Republicans, whatever you are, that's kind of a win in a way, because one of them's not coming back. Right. So,
right.
But so there's some of that going on, but then, there's some of that in some of the Republican districts too. So, this will be between ranked choice voting, the Constitutional Convention question, all of the changes and handouts, and the incumbents that aren't coming back. This is going to be a fascinating one to watch, and I hope at the end a positive one. But like we said before the break, the Senate is more suspect to me in how that's going to look coming out of it, because we could just end up flipping the bodies and having now the Senate's the one that's going to fight that, if it's a Republican governor, as opposed to the House being the one for the last 4 years that's been fighting. So, but I don't know. We'll see. It's just going to be fascinating. There's going to be a lot of issue race. Like I said, Guarantar, worked with her. Forrest Dunbar, that guy, oh my goodness, he is, he's fallen off the flat earth, to the left.
Right.
And that dude's so far over with all of the, militant policies on certain aspects and other things. And, Guarantar has actually been, I've enjoyed working with her in a lot of stuff. There's some things that she's really like, the food caucus, all about it. The PFD, she's pretty good on it. She kind of stuck with her caucus. I get it, but she's pretty pro PFD. If she had a good caucus, whatever, she'd probably be okay voting for it. So there's some aspects of working with her that haven't been, as bad as somebody like I could imagine Forrest Dunbar, watching him on that Anchorage Assembly.
Right.
Oh, good Lord.
Right,
I mean, he's going to make Zach Fields look, or Zach Fields look conservative by the time it's all said and done. So, if that was even possible. So, yeah, it'd be interesting to see, Mike. There's going to be some fascinating races. Well, I anticipate some upsets, and, I was going to say on November 7th, but we won't know on November 7th, will we?
Right.
Because of stupid ranked choice voting. Scott Kendall and Alaskans for Better Elections, and according to the Division of Elections Director, they're going to wait 14 days, 2 weeks,
right,
until we know.
Right, and know exactly really what happens. Well, let's talk a little bit about your race. During the break, you said, you was unfortunate. You were hoping to run unopposed simply because you have other things you'd like to focus on, including the con and getting other people elected. But you are now facing an opponent. And here's, to me, the interesting thing is why. I mean, you've got, it seems like, pretty universal support from amongst your constituents. You've got a lot of accolades. Now, you're hated by the right people, in my opinion. You're hated by the right people, but they decided to, to drop into the race here, and you've now got Doug Massey in there. And there's a few things that I want to paint some differences here between you and Doug. In the newspaper, which I love how they called you the arch-conservative Republican incumbent. You're not just a conservative, baby. You are an arch-conservative. It's a race that looks to be something akin to a heavyweight title fight. You're running against Doug Massey, who was the head of the Wildlife Troopers until just a week ago, where he retired and dropped his name in the hat. That you're a solid conservative with bona fides that are all great, but you've clashed with members of your Republican majority over their more moderate. You haven't clashed with the Republican majority. You've clashed with members. That you guys were promised certain things that never got delivered on, and I find again the way they reported this. But Massey says he's going to take a more collaborative approach. And of course, the first thing I think about when I think of collaborator is not necessarily a good thing. But I mean, what say you about, dropping this candidate in on you? Is this the powers that be? Is this their way of sticking the finger in the eye and saying we need to get rid of this burr under our saddle?
Well, I mean, I'm sure that's possible, Mike. I mean, if I'm not going to sit there, I don't know, what conversations took place or who did what. I have no way of knowing that. But I certainly wouldn't put it past certain people that would love to see me gone to try to support somebody else in the race. I don't know that that's how it played out at all. I could speculate, but I certainly, like I said, I know for a fact, but I've heard for months now. I mean, I knew Doug was going to put his name in the race. I've been hearing it for months. And I know people like Bill Kindig, who apparently really don't like me because he's very moderate up in the valley, has been pushing Doug to run. Right. So I know there are people that think that I am too conservative, or I'm too pro PFD, or I'm too whatever. that would love to see me gone, and if that's what happens, so be it, Mike. You know what? I'm going to go back to FedEx and make lots of money and say to hell with all of you, right? And I'm going to move on because I'm not going to waste more of my life. So
right.
If that's what the people do, and Doug ends up being a moderate or a collaborator or whatever, well, then you get what you vote for,
Right.
So be careful, vote wisely. I'm not saying that's what he would do. I'm saying, but that's how it rolls, right?
Well,
so,
let's talk about how you differentiate.
What article, by the way, was this? I don't even know what article you're talking about.
This is the ADN. This is the tight races are expected this summer in dozens of Alaska districts, and it gives a breakdown of a district by district race. It's actually an interesting article because it lays out some things that a lot of people don't know about the different races. So it is pretty good. Although, again, some of the verbiage, you arch conservative, you. But let's differentiate yourself a little bit here. I mean, when I read this first position from your opponent, I thought, oh boy, here we go. Under the permanent fund, under issues, he says, I support the largest dividend Alaskan can responsibly and sustainably afford. When they talk about a dividend that they can afford, that means to me that it's all about whatever's left over after they've done their spending. You are a supporter of a full statutory PFD, right? I mean, just to differentiate here between you and your opponent.
I always have been, Mike, and the only position I've taken that's different was out of the fiscal policy working group. You know that. And I said I would go to a 50-50, but I also said that it was under one precise condition, and that was if it was in the Constitution. If it's not, then to heck with that, because you're just going to get rolled again. So no. So If there's not a fiscal comprehensive plan that has that in the Constitution moving forward with the spending cap, which was part of the deal, then I'm out, because I want to see the whole package part of it, right? That's it. Outside of that, I've never supported anything but the statutory PFD. And I've said all along, just like you, if we're going to change it, then change the law, right? You don't do this without changing the law. I'm not going to do that. I've been very clear on that. And I think you know that. But yeah, I mean, I support. I'm not going to put in the freaking the statutory PFD amendment that got it passed and made them so mad, a few weeks ago.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. No, I mean, you were the one that was throwing all that paint at the wall to see what stuck to try and get him to do something, and you were able to do it. And yeah, there's some people who are not happy with you about it. I think this, again, to me, this just looks like again, you don't have to comment on it, but to me, this just looks like another response to that how dare he do. We're going to put somebody in there that will, again, collaborate with us in a great way.
Well, Doug may have made his own mind up of that. I don't know. And he was in Wilson's district, before too. So maybe that was a dynamic change. I mean, I don't, that may be part of the, the whole process here. But like I said, the biggest thing, Mike, to me, I mean, I know you want to keep talking about it here for a minute, but I was hoping to be able to focus on the Constitutional Convention, on helping other key strategic races, because the last thing we need to do is fight in the Matsu where we have, all conservatives, for the most part. And when there's other areas of the state that are going to be key seats when we go back to swinging the balance of power. And I hate when we do this to ourselves and have to spend our own time and energy fighting each other. That's the way it goes. But, that's not reality. It's not what it's going to be. But I was hoping to be able to do those things. It's going to split time and energy. That's the one part of it that's a little bit disappointing, because that means we can't focus as much on those other things. But again, that's how it goes.
1 minute, Mike, here. Give you the final thoughts here for this morning.
I think that's it, Mike. This is down to the wire on, a big race across the state for many. What's the power balance going to be when we're done? Ranked choice voting, redistricting, Constitutional Convention. There's a lot at play here, brother, and a lot at stake. So if there's ever a year to get involved, in races, folks, for the ones you think are good, this would be the year, no matter who your candidate is. And we're going to need some help. We're going to need help knocking on doors, making phone calls, writing articles about the Constitutional Convention, because I know most of your crowd supports it. And folks, we're going to need help. Just complaining about it on the radio, writing some comments on Facebook, that's not good enough. We're going to need real people to volunteer, step up, and help us do a campaign to get the Constitutional Convention to a point where enough people, 50% plus one, will vote yes. So folks, get off the bench and get in the game, because if you really want to see change, you're going to need to get involved.
Mike Shower, our guest. We're out of time, folks. Be kind, love one another, live well. All right, Mike. Right up to the wire, man. You're good at that.
Did my best.
You did your best. Right up to the wire. All right. I mean, again, we got a couple minutes here. We're going to have Doug on the show, and we're going to try and get as many candidates as we can on the show here over the next 6-8 weeks. to at least, get the different perspectives. But again, I just wonder, is this where Alaskans want to go, to where they basically the government takes the PFD and spends it how it wants and gives us whatever's left over in violation of the law? Or, like you said earlier, is there an not anti-incumbent, but anti-long-time incumbent fever that you see coming?
And the answer to that is, I think yes. But there's also, the other dynamic, Mike. You have to have a good challenger. If you have the same challenger that's thrown his name in the hat 4 times against a long-serving one, like, say, from the Southeast, that person's not strong enough to beat the incumbent that's been there for 20 years, and it's not going to change. And so it's not just one thing of saying, well, anti-incumbents, they're all going to lose. No, they're not. You got to have somebody that really responds to the people like, they know their name. You have a good challenger, you could see one of these, long-serving incumbents that are very powerful be beat, but that tends to not happen here. So that's a part of it, although there is still an anti-incumbent thing. I would add to it, it also depends on, the district that people represent. If it's, like the Mat-Su, very conservative, red part of the state, and they have a legislator that's been representing those values, the people will probably stay with them because they've been representing those values in their votes and what they say and do. And that could work out, not just because they're an incumbent doesn't mean they're necessarily going to be in danger of getting voted out, because the people, they're actually representing what their constituents want. So as always, it's not a simple cut and dried answer. But I think the people are sick and tired of watching the legislature not solve the problems, take the PFD, do anything and everything other than what the people want them to do. And so, yeah, if I was to say there's a flavor, there's a tendency, it's going to be against incumbents. And I think a lot of the people that dropped out of races, that's why they didn't run, because they knew their votes were going to make it really hard, and they had challengers to win those races. And I think they just gave up, said, yeah, I'm not going to waste my time. I know I'm screwed. But they did it to themselves based on what they did. Like Liz Snyder, she said, I'm for the full PFD, and then she voted against it the whole time.
Right.
Actions stand on that record.
Actions have consequences. That's the bottom line there. And so we're going to see that. I agree with you. I think that a lot of these people realize that their votes left them in an untenable position. And rather than take the L and take the loss at the polls and lose political capital because of it, they'll take some time off, and some of them will return, and they'll come back around and hope that people have forgotten those votes by the time they come back again, because I don't think we're done with some of them, but I think that they just saw this time around as untenable.
That's why the challenger matters so much, Mike, because if you have a strong challenger that can speak the speak, knows the information, can use that, their voting record and what they said and did versus what they promised on the campaign trail against the incumbent, that incumbent has probably got a chance of being beaten. That's why that matters so much. And the people getting involved, right? Same thing. If you support somebody to replace an incumbent, then you better help them. Go make phone calls for them. Go knock doors. Go volunteer and help people. Give them some money. They need that stuff to beat the incumbents, to kick them out and get better people in. But people, most of the time, they just complain, and then they don't help, and that person gets 6, 7, 8 volunteers. Well, that's tough, Mike, to win against a long-term incumbent when you don't have volunteers.
Right.
So once again, people are like, what can I do? Get off the bench and get in the game. Talk to the candidate and ask them what they need. Help them.
Right. Well, that reminds me here, Jonathan asks on YouTube, speaking of volunteers, how do we get in touch with Shower? Because my wife would love to knock on doors and sign wave.
We're going to have to spin up the campaign website again, right? Because I can talk about it now. The session is over, so I'm going to have the Mike Shower for Alaska, webpage back up. I've got my Facebook page. They can just contact me on that too, because that's okay to do that now. So they can contact me directly. They can send an email to, state email if they want. That's a way to reach me. Can't talk about the political stuff, but I will just, I will give people my number. That's not the way you should contact them, but it happens. Right. And then you got to redirect them, say, don't contact me here, contact me over there. So that all of that will be up shortly, Mike. We'll get those things. That's, just part of getting the bank account set up and all the stuff you got to do again, right? Because even if I self-fund my campaign, I still have to put it in the bank and report it all on every expense and blah, 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 because they make it hard because people have been, dishonest in the past. So everybody's got to suffer. But yeah, there's multiple ways to reach out. Just tell her, say, reach out and send me an email at one of those different things, and I'll respond, and then we'll figure out where we can use the help. But absolutely, we can certainly use it.
Best way to do it is to reach out on Facebook right now, I would say, and get that information, and Mike will get you walking the district and everything else. So, and you can do that, and then we'll be looking forward to seeing your website come up as well. Mike Shower, thanks for coming on board and joining us this morning. We love having you on, as always. Thanks for being part of it. And you can now go back to bed, so it's all good.
Right. Yeah, you always get me so fired up. This is worse than Red Bull. There's no way I'm going back to sleep after this.
It's exactly. All right, my friend. Well, thank you for coming on board. We appreciate it.
You got it.
All right, folks, we are out of time for reels now. The Michael Duke Show continues tomorrow. We're hoping, fingers crossed, that Sarah Palin will be joining us. And we're working on another couple legislators as well. We'll see what that brings. But tomorrow is another day. Don't forget, again, to like and follow the show page. Don't forget to go onto YouTube, in the YouTube link. And I've just posted that back up in the chat room again. If you haven't subscribed and rang the bell on YouTube for notifications, now is the time to do that as well. So do it now. Like and share. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.